Well, good morning, everybody. Before I flip through some slides here real quick, I would tell me what, when I think about networking, you'll hear almost everyone will say that, 70% plus of all jobs come from networking as this kind of general statement. But we struggle, I think, as job seekers, if we look at how we allocate our time, to think that we would ever match that, right? That 70% of our activity would be networking if that's where 70% of the jobs come from. And so I'm generally talking to people about what can we be doing from a networking point of view. But what does it mean? What's the hardest part about networking for you guys today as you find yourself in job search and trying to think, how can I do more of it? What's the hardest part? What's the hardest part of networking for you, Karen?
Well, I'm not as face-to-face as you are when you're networking.
Yeah.
So, although I meet a lot of people online, it's not the same.
Right. Yeah.
So, unless I'm going to have a coffee with you one-on-one later, I don't really get the whole gist of it.
Yeah. I was talking to a sales guy and said, what is it like selling during the pandemic? Because my gut says if you've got a recurring revenue business, this is a pretty great time because customers aren't leaving. But if you have to go and get new customers, it's probably harder. And he said, yeah, that's kind of true, except when I do connect with people, I get to connect with them in their home. So I'm looking at that background sometimes, as many of you have, and I can actually find things about their home office that help me connect with them. But I think when I think about what Karen said, most of us think about networking is meeting new people, right? And though I'll touch on that today, most of my conversation about networking today is reconnecting with people that we already know, right? To me, that's where the power is. And that's where we try to extend from. And that's where we've already got, a certain level of trust, right? So normally we would think about networking as a mutual exchange of value, but we're not necessarily in the best position today to exchange it. There are things we can do. We can still, put the level of intensity and work into the preparation. So we're treating that interaction with the proper level of respect. But for the most part, scale is not going to tilt to us, right? Not tilt to them. We're going to be asking for more than we're giving, right? And that's okay. It really is okay. That may be the single biggest message I deliver today, that it's okay for this not to be a mutual exchange, right? And when people show their gratitude and maybe even mention the idea of paying it forward, in some way you've exchanged more than you've received. And I think there's a great ability to do that. And I'm just strongly encouraging people to dive into this and don't feel like you're asking for favors that can't be exchanged. This is something your network would like to do for you if we just ask them right. And focus today is going to be asking them right. Feel free to ask questions anytime. You don't have to wait till the end. So when I think about a networking song, right, this is one of the Beatles, right? I never needed anyone help. I never needed anyone else's help. But now the day is gone, I'm not so self-assured. And I find I could really use your help in getting my feet back on the ground, right? So kind of in the part, we have to be careful up here. All these work except this part that says, I'm feeling down. It's okay to be feeling down with your real inside baseball friends and to be shared honestly with them for the ups and downs that this process can bring. But when we're interacting for networking purposes, we want to kind of bring that positive energy to all the interactions that we can. And why do we network, right? So I've capitalized 3 words here: advice, information, and referrals, which I would call air. But the chance to get advice is valuable. The chance to get information, and ultimately the chance to get referrals, right? And so Studies have shown that the most powerful connections are at the third level. So that means I know Rob, and Rob introduces me to Karen, and Karen introduces me to Francisca, right? And as our network gets to understand what it is we want to do better, they think who in their network might be in that industry. Someone that in that industry maybe introduces you to someone who's in that function or who is a hiring manager. And as we get further into that network, the value of those connections get more and more powerful. But ultimately, I want to get air. Air feels good, right? We lose air, I think, at times when we're behind our computer screens too long, which is where we find ourselves a lot. And when we can talk to people one-on-one, as Karen said, it would have been nice when it was face-to-face, and there may be windows for some of that even today. But the ability now to do it virtually, much like the efficiency you get out of these meetings, right? If Rob said, see you at 7:30 over in Bethesda, you know, some of you would not have gotten up at 6 o'clock to kind of get prepared to get over there at 7:30. But sure was a lot easier to join for a 7:30 discussion today from the comfort of your home. I think this window actually allows for more of these virtual interactions and the ease of them both on your side and on the other person's side. I mean, the idea of driving an hour into DC to have a 20-minute coffee that may or may not be valuable is one thing, but the ability to do it virtually is really powerful. And I think when we get air, the other place it really helps us is in our interview, right? We just are more knowledgeable, we're more prepared, we're more comfortable, because every one of these one-on-one interactions is an interview. It's an interview. And the more chances we get to practice that delivery, the better we're going to be at. Now an interview becomes another coffee meeting because you've used the same steps in the process, right? So we want to have our tools sharpened and be ready to go into it. We want to make sure that the discussion, this is about helping us network. Because if we were to send an email out and the only title was at the difference, I said, I need help networking versus I need help finding a job, but every other word was the same, our response rate would go from probably 80% positive if we said networking to about 20% or less if we said, help me find a job. So how we position it and what we say becomes really critical. It's always about help networking, right? And I like to extend from trust, right? If I have a trusted source that will extend me into their network, then I've started from trust and I've extended from trust, right? And that's going to be the most powerful role for success. I like to start with an advisory board, right? So you may not they may not think they're formally in your advisory board, though some people do this. Some people actually ask someone if they'll be on their advisory board while they're in job search. And whether the number is 5, 10, or 25, I leave that up to you, right? But these are the people that you dive into your network, and I think it's a good process for everyone to go through and say, who are the 25 most helpful connections I have? So it's not everyone on LinkedIn, right? Actually put it on a piece of paper. Who are the people that can be most helpful to you? Right? Doesn't matter where they are geographically either in today's virtual world and their ability to extend networks. Right? But to me, I start with this group and I try to get one-on-one with all of them. Right? And if they are my best connections, right? Because then I'm expecting I can get 3 or 4 other connections out of them. They're my best connections. Right? So, 10 can become 50, 25 could become 100. Just in this core group of your most trusted advisors, you could be busy networking for months, right? Especially if we're trying to say, how can I get 3 or 4 one-on-ones with people every week? Right? Well, boy, if I can deliver 50 potential connections just from my core, where I already have a level of trust, and then, yeah, I'm doing the other stuff on the outside to try to get to other people that I want to reach out to who are outside my core. So the combination of the two can produce a really busy opportunity to get air. And I really believe, there's a lot of ways to get advice. There's a lot of ways to get information, but referrals really come one-on-one, right? I think virtual coffees are, my God, I don't know this number, but I'd say about 80, you can get 80% of the value out of a Zoom coffee meeting versus meeting in person. And certainly if it's somebody you already know, maybe if it's a brand new connection, maybe that number is lower than 80. But for people we already know, where we have some interactions previously, we can get a lot of value out of that. So, these Zoom coffee meetings are the future still for right now, and I think are such a huge efficiency tool that we want to get good at them. We need to get good at them. Right? Any questions? I know I'm trying to get through the slides fast so that we can have time for a few questions at the end, but feel free to stop me if something comes up.
Excuse me, I had a question.
Yes.
What is WDYK?
Yeah, geez, that's a very good question. Who do you know? So
thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you. I didn't mean to skip over that, Gracie. So here's the other thing, we talked about that interaction with recruiters earlier to make sure we understand how they want us to respond. I'd say one of the biggest challenges, we've asked this person for a coffee meeting. We now have a coffee session with them. But when that coffee session is ending, we cannot let it end without saying, who else do you know in your network that I should get connected to? Right? Because the other hard thing about networking, if it's one-off networking, I have a coffee meeting with one person and I don't get any more names, and I have a coffee meeting with another person, I don't get any more names, then networking does get to be hard, right? But boy, if I have a coffee session with one person who gives me 4 other people I should connect to, now I'm energized that this one has become 5. This one has become 3. And you hit the jackpot every now and then that a person just says, let me know whoever is in my network you want to be connected to. I do think one of the homework things here is to, if we're connected to them on LinkedIn, is to already know, right, that Karen and I are having coffee. I've gone through her LinkedIn connections and I have 5 people on my list. So that if Karen doesn't have names when I ask her, I'm going to say, hey, I took the liberty of going through your LinkedIn connections. How well do you know these 5 people? I'd love to meet any of them. And I had a person who did all the coffee meetings I've had. I've only had one person who's done this exercise. He went through and listed 10 people I was connected to, had their titles, their company, and the job at that company that he was interested in. That was, I've only had one person ever do that, and I'd say a smaller percentage of people have the idea of who they'd like to be connected to, but that's probably 10 or 20%. But the opportunity to ask, we have to ask. Gracie.
I'm sorry, I had one more question.
No,
I
you
was
don't have to
just
be sorry for
wondering
asking
about,
questions.
as far as referral etiquette,
Yes.
when you're referring someone, do you somehow ask, who you're referring them to for permission for someone to contact you? I'm not quite sure how that goes, or do you just send them out cold? So
No,
how do you work that?
Gracie, that you're nailing the questions. That's another really good question. And so it depends how well you know the person. Like, I have a bunch of people I know are going to take connection requests. And so I even tell the person, reach out to Rob, use my name and CNN, right? And I know I don't need to get in the middle of that connection because I know he's going to accept it. But other people, I'm going to reach out to them first and say, hey, Mark, I have this situation. I'd like to introduce you to this guy. Is that okay? So if you haven't done a lot of it yet, and you don't necessarily know how people would receive it, then I think you want to check with the person that the connection is okay, and then go ahead and make it. But a lot of people will already know that if you use their name, you can grab them. Rob.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to pick up on that, Bob and I have been kind of, connecting people between the two of us. And I think Bob finally said, Rob, will you stop asking permission to connect? Because I would send Bob an email saying, I have this person. Is it okay? And we just developed a rhythm together and a trust where we began to speak a different language, which was obviously if you're sending somebody, you vetted them out, we're okay. But it's just an example of two people sort of figuring out how they're going to work through that particular question. So anyway.
I do think if you haven't done it a lot and you're not in the regular beat of doing it, then I think it's good to get that person's permission. And it's always good to put a little copy of the person's LinkedIn profile when you ask, so that the person can actually click on that LinkedIn profile and see the person. And the higher up you're trying to connect someone into an organization, the higher the probability you're going to want to get pre-approval. But yeah, I think the other thing we don't do sometimes is think about people we know that we could connect them to other people independently of somebody asking. So you meet when we're in job mode, how can we add value? Boy, is there someone I know, and I'd ask all of you to think about this, is there someone you know that would benefit from a connection you could make to somebody else, and that you could do it, before they ask? That's adding real power into that network, in that you're providing a connection that someone hasn't even asked for. And that can be a great thing. Okay. I do not know why my screen froze, Rob. And I can't get the slide to go forward.
Oh,
I got it that way. Let's try this.
okay.
So we talked all the different mediums, right? So I prefer Zoom over the phone and phone over email. I think too often this is conducted via email, and email is too easy, it's too burdensome. People don't get the value out of it. So phone call is better than email. Zoom is better than phone. In person is better than Zoom. Always personalize everything. So, we talked about this, and I know you guys already get it, but probably 95% of my LinkedIn requests are not personalized that people send me. 95%. And people don't, that little couple minutes really continue to differentiate yourself in all your interactions. I'm a big fan of coming up video in every meeting I go to, because I think it's a networking opportunity. And if you treat them as a networking opportunity, then I think, this is a video world, and I know people can be tired of video, and it can be overwhelming at times. But when I would just encourage you to, if you treat them like a networking opportunity, then coming up video is the most helpful part. And I think bringing positive energy and gratitude goes a huge way in networking, that you will get more powerful value from that than you can imagine. It's still going this way. I like to encourage people to set aside specific time each week to work LinkedIn. So this isn't, I'm going to work it randomly because someone sent me one, or I'm diving in there. But when you're blocking out your time, if you're doing time management, how are we blocking off time just for LinkedIn? Because it really is the place most people are comfortable, right? So have you reached out to all your warm connections, right? Have you reached out to your affinity connections? Are you thinking about target companies and how to get connected there? So blocking off time, dealing with this in a focused versus random manner of what you want to do with some strategy perspective. When you get connected to someone you used to work with, go look at their connections. You'll probably find 3 or 4 other people you used to work with you're not connected to that you should be. And that's true with all the extensions when you're connected to somebody else. I'm a big fan of connected to recruiters. People have heard me talk about that a lot, only because they're open networkers and they open up the company. So if I have no connections at Amazon, I go get connected to 5 recruiters at Amazon, I'm probably now connected to 3,000 people at Amazon at the second level. And that lets me, when I want to try to slice and dice thing, I might find that now someone, when I do a search at Amazon and I try some other affinity, like the school I went to, or some other affinity, like a previous company we used to work at, that I thought I maybe had no connections at Amazon. And now I find I've got 5 affinity connections that I can go work. We maybe weren't at a prior company at the same time, but the fact we were both at, say, VeriSign in my case, gives me the ability to work out to that person and get connected and have a conversation, even whatever that is. I think you do a little bit of research. I think I've shared this before. I get 1 or 2 creative LinkedIn requests per year. So when I get a creative LinkedIn request, it gets up on my radar screen. Now, what does that mean to me, creative? I can tell the person did more research than spending 30 seconds on my LinkedIn profile, right? They could have done it in 5 or 10 minutes, but they went, not only looked at LinkedIn, they did some sort of Google search. They put together pieces and said why that connection would be of value to them. And why get 1 or 2 of those a year? I've seen some people that are really good where they come here with no network. And I think of one young lady in particular, came from Northern Europe, came here, had no real network, and she really utilized LinkedIn to develop her network and do what I call the 3 C's: connect, converse, and coffee. So this was back when we were regularly meeting in person. She would connect with people on LinkedIn with usually through some warm connection that someone else knew. She would have a conversation, and then she was able to turn that conversation into a coffee. Again, one of the great affinity places she did this, she was a member of CNM, Career Network Ministry, and she targeted alumni of the Career Network Ministry. That was like 50% of her focus. People who had come through CNM before and were working in industries she wanted to work in. And she did great at it. And I don't know if everyone always checks LinkedIn before you apply for a job, but if referrals are a big part of the game, if 1/3 of all jobs go because of referrals, and I see a job, first thing I'm doing is going over to LinkedIn and see if I know anyone at the company. Because if I know someone at the company, I am trying to work that employee referral game quickly in order to see if I might get into the employee referral bucket. Because it's the best way to get a job, right? It's clearly the best way to get a job. And I tell people on employer referrals, there's 2 ways of doing them. You have some target companies and you try to get connected at those target companies. That's one way. Or you look at where you know people. Beverly, please.
Hi, good morning. I have a
Good morning.
quick question. So if I see a job that I'm interested in at a company,
Yep.
and I check LinkedIn and everything, should I wait and try to connect with that person before I apply to the job, or should I just go ahead and apply to the job? Because
Well,
sometimes it may take a while for you to kind of get connected to the person.
Yeah. So thank you, Beverly, for that very good question. And you would be one of my straight persons for my potential answer, because when I think about networking, right? So, and people say, how do I spend 70% of my time networking? So if you had target companies, right? Let's say you had 20 target companies. I want to go get pre-connected to people I know there, right? So this is only a partial answer, the first A part to you. So I want to go right now and lay the groundwork at companies I'd like to work for, even though there may not be a job opening today. Because when I do see that job opening, that clock starts ticking pretty fast, right? And so if I pre-cleared it with somebody, then when that job comes up, boom, I'm able to move into the employee referral bucket really quick and make it happen. So that's only one part of it. But I ask people, how many pre-cleared employee referrals do you have? That's an exercise well worth thinking about, right? But now the other part of your question, it's popped up. You don't have a pre-cleared. The question becomes, how well do I know them? I'm first going to reach out to that person. If they're a first level connection, I'm going to try to work that before submittal, at least to have some conversation, right? And get that person's advice. If they're second or third level, I'm probably submitting and then trying to work it. Or I might give myself a day or two to see how fast that bubbles up. I'm also going to look, how long has the job been posted? If I happen to catch it right when it first got posted, that gives me more of a chance to work the employee referral side. If I caught it and it's been posted for 30, 60 days, then I'm probably submitting and chasing on the back end. Then I'm probably looking for information as much as I'm looking for a referral, right? How can I be a better interviewer? What's the interview process like, right? How, you know, any other advice you can give me when I get into the company? Might you know who the hiring manager is? A lot of times they might have some idea. So things like that. So how long it's been posted, but I would encourage you, think about a few places where you could get a pre-cleared employee referral. All right. And the other side is where you look at it by just people. Some people are pretty agnostic. They're going, you know, I could do finance for anyone. Well, in that case, let's go find companies where you know someone and let's go after the employee today and see if you can get pre-cleared. And when you show up to any meeting, boy, if you show up a few minutes early, and I know some of you did, often you get the chance to talk to the person running the meeting. And that person knows more about the meeting and the people that show up for that meeting than anyone else. A great source of, you know, especially when we get back in person, there's 100 people at a meeting. If you get there a few minutes early, find out the people that are running it, they can kind of help you target who are the best people that show up at that meeting that are worth knowing, worth meeting. And we are just about done. So networking is about follow up or fail. It's all on us. And too often, you know, if people, they don't do something they say they're going to do, we kind of let it drop. And I would just encourage you to keep on following up. Those same sort of notes that we talked about, Rob mentioned that you leave with recruiters, we want to leave them all the way in all of our networking interactions, right? And when you have a really great meeting, a chance to say, geez, Beverly, that was a really awesome meeting. I hope you don't mind if I'm going to go work on some of the things you mentioned to me today. But if there is a chance for us to have a follow-up meeting in the future, I hope you'd consider that. So leave that hook before you leave a great meeting so that you have the ability to go back in there and have another great meeting. And these are some examples of some of the things to write. This one's on the long side. I put more stuff in here so you could pick some things out and that you like and pick some things in here that you don't. But this is reconnecting, mentioning a little bit about my prior history to a person I already know, because most of mine are with people I know, and letting them know that I want to get together in person and I'm going to be reaching out to them, right? I got down the bottom, my LinkedIn profile, because even if he knows me really well, he can still connect on it. But I told him I'm going to reaching out to them, right? So I'm not asking a question where he can blow it off, he or she, in this case, Dave, can blow it off. And I'm not going to, if Dave doesn't reply to this, I'm going to reach out to him. Right? I'll reach out to you next week. So I'm calling him, right? And I'm telling him I want to both get his advice, but I also want to get into his network. This one is, you know, with a recruiter. Couple things to highlight. I referenced that I applied for a job at this company, but I didn't ask her for any help with that, right? What I did is offer help. Can I help her in any way to fill hard to fill job recs, right? So I let her know that SEIC is the top of my target companies, a little bit about my background. I have applied for a job. Can I help you in any way, right? If she was impressed with this, and if she might send this over to the person who's handling this, depending upon the size of the company. It'd be great if she looked at my LinkedIn profile. She might not, but it'd be even greater if she reached out to me and asked me for some help. That would be great. Here's one with just an alumni. Again, I'm using the affinity and reaching out to them. And here, I've actually done the 2-step in one, right? My connection, I've actually asked her for 5 minutes of time. That may or may not happen, but I think when you're an alumni, the probability of this happening is better than 50%, right? I think if we've got some affinity, I grabbed onto that affinity, gave her a little bit of puff and said, would love your insights. And this is, you know, the job referral thing. So the thing I highlight here on job referral is that even though I know James, and in this case, I've already set up a pre-cleared job referral. He knows that if I see something at Amazon, I'm sending it to him. But I've actually taken a list here, which I don't have a copy of, but I've said, here were the job requirements, and here's why I meet or exceed them. I don't want James to feel uncomfortable that he's referring me for a job that I'm not qualified for. I want him to feel very comfortable that I am qualified for this job I asked the referral for. So I would take all the job requirements and show why I meet them. And if I didn't, I'd show something that looks like, here's why I do because of this, this, and this. You know, I might not have this degree, but I got 15 years experience. And I'm going to take a few of the nice to haves. I'm going to include it here because I want James to be able to do forward send on to the hiring manager or forward send on to recruiting. And I'm sending him a note thinking he can do that. Gracie.
So in the previous one, you showed where you were saying you wanted to meet with them for 5 minutes. Is that what you're basically asking when you do a one-on-one, like a coffee, virtual Zoom meeting, 5 minutes?
Well, that one case is an alumni that I'm just looking for an easy connection, right? So 5 is definitely on the low side. But if I'm reaching up to somebody more senior, I just want to put a thing in there for us to have a short conversation. Usually, the coffee meeting time, I would say, is more like 20 minutes. And 20 minutes would be your request. And there, as you're getting closer to the 20-minute window, you're going to say, geez, Rob, I asked you for 20 minutes. I see I'm getting close. I want to be sensitive to your time. And Rob hopefully says, no problem. I got another 15, right? But you got to go there assuming you got to get your quick pitch in. You got to lay out the groundwork for Rob, what you're looking for, and you got to then listen and get lots of advice from him in 20 minutes, right? But most of them will get extended, but 20 minutes, I'd say, is the number that you want to target with most people. That particular slide, I don't know the person at all, so I'm just trying to get a chance to hear a voice, and 5 will turn into 10 for sure, and if it works out well, maybe a follow-up.
Okay. One more thing. You said get your quick pitch in, and what was after that?
Got to say, the quick pitch tells you a little bit about yourself, depending upon how well you know the person.
Right.
And then where you're looking for help.
Okay.
Kind of what Rob does at the beginning of the session, right? That it'd be great if everyone showed up with questions, because if this was a coffee meeting, we'd be like, how can I help you? Right.
Okay.
And you got to be able to say, well, because I found people say, I got a lot of interviews and I'm not getting the job, or I'm not getting enough interviews, or I'm really unclear. I'm trying to make a job transition and I'm still battling out should my focus be. But there's something, right? There's something that causes you could say it's just a chat, but you wouldn't get the value out of it. But I think it's, hey, I wanted to reconnect. It's been a while since we reconnected, give you an update, get some advice, and ask you for a few referrals.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And that is it. Let me stop sharing this. Slide, stop sharing.
Well, Bob's working on the stop sharing function.
There we go.
Just so you know, and a few of you have caught it, Bob was nice enough to give us his slide deck. So I slid that into the chat area for everyone. If you don't see it, if you're having difficulties, just you can email me. I'll shoot it out from here. But that'll particularly help on some of those last slides where Bob's got some great examples of what to say in some of these situations. Fabulous job, Bob Korzeniewski. I haven't seen you present in a while. It's gotten better. You've improved, sir. We all knew Bob has a heart of gold. He's an amazing guy. I always thought, on the presentation side, you were pretty good. Now you finally figured this thing out. You cracked the code, sir.
It's the 20-minute presentation that has me now, Rob.
There you go. Well, while we've got Bob here, can we talk? Can we ask you some questions before
Absolutely.
you go? Perfect. Okay. So I think everybody should have some questions here, and I'd love the questions you already had. So I'll start, and because I've got a question.
Yeah.
I think that for me, where I hear people struggle is that who do you know kind of area. It can get a little clunky on getting the words out right. And I wrote your words down, which is a little bit different, which is who do you know that I should be connected to? Which is a nice way to say it. Do you have some other thoughts on that? Is there
Yeah.
another way to say that?
I think it starts with a theme that says this is all about networking. That's our theme, right? This is not about job search. This is not about help me find a job. This is about, hey, I find myself in this unique window, right? Unique window gives me an opportunity to both reconnect with people in my network that I value and extend my network, right? That's exciting. And that's where, if you actually believe that, you can show some energy, right? And that's exciting to both reconnect and extend, because I'm looking for in this window of time, I'm not looking for a job, right? I'm looking for a great place to go make an impact. And I want to be as smart as I can. And so the more people I can talk to, the smarter I'm going to be about what will be an important decision for me. And I think it ends up you approach it not like someone hoping to get one opportunity, but like someone that thinks they're going to get multiple opportunities, and they need to be smart to figure out the landscape, right? Like they're adding value to the landscape. The landscape isn't adding value to them. They're adding value to the landscape. And so you got to figure out, how do you get as smart as you can about this next move?
Yeah.
So I think based upon your background and how well you know the person, there's a chance to present it differently. But I generally say, we say, hey, my previous jobs have come from networking. I know my next one is gonna too. So I'm all in on networking, and I'm really enjoying the opportunity to both reconnect and make some new friends, right? And so who do you think would add value? As I've kind of laid out that in my case, it might be, I'm a senior finance guy looking to kind of find another senior finance role in the technology space, right? Whether I said it was government contracting, or whether I said, and it doesn't have to be one role in one industry, but it has to at least be where the person feels like you got some focus on what it is you want to do. The hardest thing about networking is when you're not sure what you want to do.
Right.
That's, when people find themselves in that mode, they tend not to network. And so that's one thing I encourage people to get, because if I say Rubik's Cube, it could be 3 things in 3 industries, you can go out and network. But if it won't fit in the Rubik's Cube, then it's really hard to network.
Got it. Tell you something else that you did really well, and we're going to make this video available. If you listen to the video, I would encourage you to play something back you just heard Bob do, which I think you're an unconscious competent. I'm not even sure you do it, but you provide a really interesting transition to the tactic. In other words, we look and we write down, okay, who do you know could energize my network? But what you do very naturally when you go into role, Bob, is you have a transition to that sentence. Quite frankly, for me, I think as presenters, I think as salespeople, I think as anybody who is trying to get your own agenda into a meeting, the key is not the agenda pieces, it's how you kind of weave them together so it feels like a nice coffee conversation and not an interrogation. And so pay attention to the transitions. I'll throw one at you, Bob, and I'm curious of your feedback. And a lot of these transitions fit our own particular style. So one of the ways that I've always gotten to some of that networking question, the transition, is I value your opinion. And so if you were me, who would you, and now we slide in Bob's piece. Now, this is just an example of a transition, but when I have my transition ready, I'm calmer to get to the elephants in the room, basically, which is, okay, so Trudy's gone to play tennis. I mean, there's things that are being talked about, and then there's the stuff that I want to get to that, who do you know? How do I jump there? So to me, a lot of times it's transitions. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, you got those transitions, Rob, by practice, delivery, you to eventually figure out what works for you. Mm-hmm. And the harder thing for us is if we've got one off or do them a couple of times, it's a little tricky to get as comfortable. That's why the more of these we do, the better we get at them. And the fact that they're mini interviews, to me, is if you went through the networking thing and said I had 25 of them and I didn't get anything out of it, I would say you got a huge amount of interview practice, right? You got a huge amount of interview practice, and I guarantee you, you're a better interviewer than you would be if you weren't doing virtual coffee meetings. And the fact that interviewing is now delivered in the same format, this format, that's why I think virtual is in some ways more important than face-to-face from the practice perspective. But, and I do think figuring out what transition works best for you. I told the story before, Rob, we were doing prep for our IPO when I was at Network Solutions. And, the bankers gave me this, worked on the things they wanted me to say with all the slides and stuff. And I got up for the practice session. We got the foremost senior heads of these banks from New York City in this big conference room. And I was worse than terrible. I really thought I was going to kill it. And I was awful. I still remember going back to my hotel room that night in agony about how bad I was, right? And then I realized I got to write these, right? I had to change the order of the slides. I had to change a few things on the slides. I had to completely change how I wanted to deliver them using their kind of core content and the stuff we wanted to do. And then when it was my transition, was my delivery, I was really comfortable with it. I was so excited when it was my turn to deliver that. I was like, let me at you, right? But I had to own it, right? And it's tough to own it without practice, right? But I do think the idea that people want to help, that was the beginning. Your network wants to do this. They don't know how to help you find a job, most of them, but they do have people in their network they can connect you to. And though they haven't offered to do it independently, which I'm going to write something on soon, if you ask them, they would gladly do it. Now, how do we create some gratitude out of that? Follow-up emails, right? So I have a meeting with Rob and we have this great meeting. What I have to do is send a follow-up email to Rob that's thanks for the meeting. Here was my takeaways. Here are the 5 things I'm going to go do based upon our meeting. That creates gratitude. That creates, Rob is now saying, wow, I was way better in that meeting than I thought I was. Look at all those action items they took away. Sometimes you got to create a few, right? But it also gives you the opportunity. If Rob said he was going to do something for me and I put it in this email, I have the ability to then follow up maybe a week later and say, hey, Rob, I just wanted to update you on the status of all the action items I took from our meeting, which is, again, a little tickler if he was supposed to do something and he didn't do it, because I put the 5 things I'm going to do. And down the bottom, I put the 1 or 2 things he said he was going to do. Now that email, he feels good about that meeting. The probability of a follow-up meeting has increased, and the ability to tickle him if he doesn't do the 2 things he said he was going to do with another update. But it's creating a relationship now from that one-off point, right? I may have 3 times I can go back to him, because I may go back to him and say, hey, geez, Rob, you introduced me to Beverly. I just want to let you know it was awesome, right? Beverly was so helpful in so many different ways. She introduced me to 3 other people, and I could see where Beverly and I could become great friends in the future, right? So I'm creating value from that one meeting in 3 or 4 different ways. One is an update of the conversation we had with him. One is a follow-up. One is if he introduced me to anyone else, I'm going to let him know how that went and that it happened. Not many people do that. So people that are kind of, networking 401, they're really good at that. And now we took a relationship where Rob didn't maybe know me as well, and I've continued to try to show him perceived value from that one meeting. So when I ask him for another meeting, he's probably saying yes.
Excellent. More questions. This is your time. I don't get Bob a whole lot. Gotta use it. I got like 9 of them lined up, but there you go. Beverly got her hand up. Go ahead.
So how do you reconnect or follow up after someone has referred you for something and maybe it didn't work out the way, it didn't result in getting a job offer?
But
So
they referred you in their company?
Yes.
And did you get an interview?
No, I didn't get any response.
Okay. Because when you're in the employer referral bucket, you have done everything from a networking point of view that you can do, right? That's great. And I would take one employer referral over about 20 job submittals. probably about a 1 in 20 ratio. I think the probability of success, right, is that, because for some companies that automatically gets you a phone screen. For others, what it guarantees is human eyes on your resume. So if you had referred me to a particular job, I would probably, and it depends, do I know you well enough that I know your address and I can send you a personalized handwritten note? That would be what I would do. So let's say I did. Beverly, I knew you well enough. I know where you live. Then I would send you a handwritten note and would just thank you for, going through that process and submitting me as an employee referral. In this case, it didn't lead to an interview, but I really value our relationship and your willingness to do that. And if there are other opportunities in the future, I hope you'll consider it again. Let me know if there's ever anything I can do for you. Grateful. My favorite tagline,
Mhm.
thank you for investing in me.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Because I want to follow up and say something. I'm just not sure what to say. And I don't know if they feel awkward about interacting with me because it didn't work out, but.
No, hey, I think you let them off the hook. You say, hey, I know often
Good.
this doesn't work out, right? But your willingness to be supportive of me, and thank you for investing in me.
Okay.
Your company remains high on my list of targets. And if I find another opportunity, maybe we'll get to try it again. And if I can ever do anything for you, please don't hesitate to ask.
Okay, thank you. That's
Something
really
like that. Something like that.
Excellent.
I'm a handwritten note guy. It's a little harder in today's world. We could spend the next hour talking about personalizing things that people do and how they make a difference. We still hear recruiters say when they get handwritten thank you notes, they send them around the office. Maybe not so much today, which blows my mind. And after a dozen plus years of doing this, that recruiters would really feel that way. So personalize, customize, customize. And I don't know how many of you, this is your first time, right? But when I see that Rob is hosting this, I go on LinkedIn before I come to the meeting. I send him a LinkedIn request in advance of coming here and say, I'm really excited. I'm going to be a first timer joining you on Tuesday, but I've read your blogs, your blogarticles, and I've really been impressed with your thought process, and I would love to be connected, right? So then I do that first. He's blown away because he doesn't get those before his Tuesday meetings. He's at least not blown away, but at least takes notice.
Blown away. I'd be blown away.
And then you know enough about him to ask some sort of question in this meeting. So you've doubled it, right? And then you follow up after the meeting, send him another note saying, geez, I'm really glad I got to that meeting. I got a lot of value out of it, and I look forward to being as regular as my schedule is going to allow me to be in the future. Boom. You now got, in 10 minutes worth of work, a guy like Rob who will probably take a one-on-one opportunity to be supportive of you if you wanted one. And you got that with 10 minutes worth of work.
It's terrific. And I think, Bob, we're back on that 250 to 1 ratio. There's always going to be somebody going, when is that guy going to stop sending me all these thank yous? And the other 250 are going to say, just like you mentioned, 1 or 2 LinkedIn creative LinkedIn's, I get this one time a year from somebody. I think it's those little things that make a difference. Grace, you've got your hand up.
I'm wondering, when you talk about sending a personalized note or email, what do you think of sending a thank you email? A video thank you. Rather than type text, it's a little video. I've seen where you can do a little video.
Rob can talk to video better than I can, but I would say if it's well done, it's awesome. If it's not, it doesn't add much more value. So it starts to become the quality of the video. There are some people who, like Kim Foley has talked on my Thursday meeting about how to go through all this process. Kim's a video expert, right? She sends these video thank yous that are amazing. So I do think if you're going to try to be a little different like that, then you also have to try to be, you're not going to be as good as Kim, but you have to be as good as you can be. So the video things add value, real value. I don't know what you would say, Rob.
Okay.
No, I think you've nailed it. That's a tough one because if you're not ready to invest in it properly, I think it takes away from it. So I've actually experimented with it a little bit myself on my calendar just to try and welcome people. And I just sort of looked at it and went, it's like giving a presentation. Sometimes it looked good on paper, but it just doesn't seem to transfer. So Bob, I think you made a good point. If you know what you're doing and you can do it right. Quick question to you, Bob, just on that. When she does those good videos, are they personalized or is it a one size fits all?
I always prefer personalized, but for, you know, because if not, it feels like you just sent me something standard out of a can. And so that might still be interesting, especially if you're trying to sell me video. But if you're not trying to sell me video, I want it personal. I mean, I always want it personalized. So I err on this way on the side of personalized.
So
right?
Kim, the person you were talking about, she
Yeah.
personalized each one of them.
Yeah, she's in that business, so she can do them really quick. But Kim Foley I think it's kimfoley.com is her website.
Yep.
But she got into the business of video like 7 or 8 years ago. She went around, taught corporations how they can make high quality videos using their iPhones and didn't need to wait for the corporate kind of video guys to show up once a year to help them out. And so she's also into makeup and presentations, has been in the entertainment industry 25 years. So
Now an easier way to do it, folks, is your Zoom. If you set yourself up right, you really do have and your sound's good, you can probably pull it off there too. One last thing, I do video for my clients, and so I'm in the middle of that answer. I have about 80% of it that doesn't really change all that much, but I can add a couple things in the beginning and the end, and that's the personalization. So we're not really, at least for me, I don't really create a brand new script, but I create a couple of moments that absolutely make it feel personalized.
I think if you did spend the time doing 10 more minutes of research on the person, and you can somehow personalize your note back to them in a way that's different from everybody else.
Yeah.
I have a question, Bob, if you don't mind. And I know that we are always advised that in networking situation, we should ask for air. Now, a couple of times I've been stumped because I got into a one-on-one situation where the person I'm trying to connect with will open the talk by saying, how can I help you? In terms of, I don't feel like they know me well enough or what I do so that they could speak of me to anybody else. So I was hoping that at least for the first 5 minutes, I was trying to share a bit of my background, also try to understand from them a little bit where they're coming from before making an ask.
Absolutely.
So when they hit you with the ask, I'm always stumped. So any thought?
Yeah, so you can't judge unless you know the person well, or they're in maybe what Rob and I do, just we're trying to help people. And if we get to know you a little bit, you could say, hey, here's my situation. Can I get some help? But for the most part, you got to lay down, you don't already have trust, right? That's
Exactly.
why I prefer to start in places where I already have trust and grow from that. But where you don't have trust, you have to establish it, right? So you have to say a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and be as clear as you can on how that person can help you based upon where you are. That's why we don't know. What we know is everyone can help us network. They can help us extend our network. Every person can do that. And people want to have positive interactions. So they avoid interactions that they perceive might be negative, right? And if you ask me to help you with the job and I can't, then I avoid that because I don't want to have a negative interaction. I can't help you. But I can help you network. It might only be one person I give you because you didn't establish a big platform of trust, or I don't have a big network, or maybe what you're looking for connections in is not a place I'm deep. But I can always give you one, almost always give you one. And for people who haven't dived into the CNM alumni network, that's one where people have kind of been through the job search process, and depending on how long ago it was, the fact you've been through that process, you're much more empathetic and willing to help people than people in general. So that's another affinity bucket.
Excellent. Aida, you have your hand up.
I do. Thank you.
Good
Yeah,
morning.
Good morning, Bob. I recently had a one-on-one over the phone with somebody. And to me, the question, why am I reaching out to this person in the first place?
Yeah.
And I think I needed to have, and this goes back to, I think, Jean's comments about why are you, why do I want to get to know this person?
Yeah.
What is it about their experience or information, their advice, possibly their referrals, that I may get a great opportunity to learn more as I think it's less about finding the job, but it's, hey, I'm learning about something that I'm generally interested in. So, my interest is, entry career. This is a person who graduated from college a year ago.
Yeah.
How did you use your career services? So I was interested in that person's story so I can learn more about that general topic so I can, fingers crossed, better help somebody other people that I'm coming in contact with. What's the why?
Yeah, you're almost in the informational interview mode, right? So which is slightly different than the networking mode. But for people that are maybe new to the area, right? Or new or changing industries or changing functions, all of a sudden this informational interview bucket, which is a whole bunch of information on there, conduct to them. A lot of people are more comfortable in that because that is truly saying this is not about a job, I'm just trying to get smarter. So every part of our networking is a form of informational interview, but for some people you can state it more pure. So recent college, people who are in college, when I go speak at colleges, I'm like, you got a huge bucket opportunity for informational interview. You can get to anyone on the planet you want, right? For people who are job transition, I got a bunch of stories of people who are job transition and through informational interviews got their opportunities, right? But they were careful not to make it be about a job, not to be, hey, I'm talking to you and I've applied for 22 different jobs at your company, but it's an informational interview. But truly, how do I get information? And it's energizing to get information. You feel like you're smarter because you touch points, right? I know from Deborah's perspective, the ability to then talk to other senior executives in a more comfortable manner because you've been doing it. You've been doing it while you were in job search mode, having those type of conversations. So you're now when 5 different people from the company who are all pretty senior are asking you a bunch of questions, you turned it into a conversation because you've been having a lot of these conversations.
But thank you for sort of differentiating between an informational interview or informational coffee and a network coffee.
Yeah.
But I never thought of it that, I sort of probably fuse, there's probably an overlap as you mentioned, but thank you for sort of slightly different AIDA.
Well, and there's a guy we had, Phil Sneer he did several years of a discussion of information just on informational interviews. So if you did like a 100-page deck with more examples than you can ever imagine, if anybody wants that, I'll put my email in there and you can send it to me and I'll send you the deck. I'll find it.
It's outstanding. Bob, tremendous job today. Really. I'm grateful that you were able to spend some time with us. I'm going to put this, I'll put the video up on our meetup. So you'll be able to spot it there. If you don't, just shoot me an email. And we're going to meet again in 2 weeks, same time, same place, with another topic. But really a virtual round of applause for Bob Korzeniewski. It's not just a good-looking head of hair. He's got more going. I'm very good at hair.
Did get a haircut just for this, Rob.
You and your hair. Okay, but I'm not bitter. That's the good thing. Besides, I was shown love at the beginning of this meeting, and we still responded and came through okay. Anyway, folks, have a great day. And again, I'll let you know when the video's up, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Thanks so much, Bob.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thank you.
God bless.
Great job. Bye-bye.